Hey friends, and Happy New Year. Today we're gonna make a champagne cake. Now I made this particular cake about 2 years ago, and I love this cake. It was moist, delicious, and it was beautifully decorated, if I do say so myself. Now I like to use fresh florals in any cake that I'm decorating. You can see them here and here and here and here. And really cakes are how I got my calling card out in the world for baking. So I'm gonna go back to my roots today. I will show you how you can use fresh roses in your cake. You just need the right tools. I'll show you that today. And within the cake, I'm going to use a sparkling wine, which means it has no alcohol in it. It won't alter the taste all that much. You just won't get a buzz, okay? So it'll still be good, but no alcoholic buzz from the cake. And then on the outside of the cake, I'm going to decorate with Prosecco. So let's get started. I've already prepped my pans for today. I'm using 3 6-inch pans, and I have sprayed them and then lined them with parchment paper. I do that every single time. And I know that this pan looks a little bigger. All I'll do is add more in this particular pan, and then I'm going to tort it or cut it in half so that I have equal layers. All right, I'm going in with 3/4 of a cup of salted butter. And I don't remember how much sugar, but just check the description box. We'll go in with 3 eggs and a wee bit of vanilla. The leavening agents and the salt. Now for the flour and the sparkling wine, I'm gonna add them alternatively. So I'll add in about half of the flour, half of the wine, and then so on and so forth. Now when making a cake, you really want to focus on the foundation of your cake, and by foundation, I mean simply just making sure that you have an even amount of batter within each pan, because that eliminates you from having to hack off so much of the cake when you're trying to level it. So I'm going to use a kitchen scale, and for each of these pans, I'm going to weigh out the batter. Typically for these, I go for about 300 grams to about 350 grams in each one, and just make sure that it's fairly even across the board. So that's what I'm going to start off with today. Now these will go into an oven for about 20 minutes. I'm going to wait until they look golden brown on the top, and the sides of the cake has pulled away from the pan. And when I stick a knife in it, it comes out clean. While the cake is baking, I'm going to make a Swiss meringue buttercream. This is one of my favorite buttercreams to work with. It is silkier and buttery, and the texture of the buttercream is just so much better than the other buttercreams that I've worked with. But it takes a little while to make. So I'm gonna go ahead, get it set up, and then walk you through how to make this buttercream so that we can use it on our cake. Now, the first step in making this Swiss meringue buttercream is to get out a kitchen scale. Now, if you don't have a kitchen scale, you're welcome to use something like a measuring cup for your egg whites. But I do prefer to use the scale, 1, because it saves me time, and then 2, I know exactly what's going into my Swiss meringue buttercream. I am looking for 120 grams of egg whites, 119. Okay, and then I have a 1.25 cups worth of granulated sugar in here. I'm just gonna add that to the bowl. I just wanna use a whisk to pull this all together. Quick little stir. And now the egg whites will go on top of the water. gonna do is check and see if this mixture is ready. I'm gonna dip my spoon into the eggs and the sugar. And then I'm gonna take just a little bit and put it on my finger. If it's still gritty, like if I can feel the sugar as I'm rubbing my fingers together, then it's not ready to be removed from the heat. I'm gonna take a little bit, and it's not that hot where you're gonna get burned. Yeah, I can still feel the sugar on that. So I'm gonna keep stirring. Let's stop and check again. Oh, there it is. That's really smooth. And that tells me that the sugar and the eggs have fully cooked together and they are ready for the next stage. Now be careful with removing this from the heat. Down on the bowl. I'm gonna put this right onto my mixer. And we're gonna start off with the whisk attachment. And we want to whip as much air into the sugar and the eggs as we can possibly get. So we're gonna let this whip for about 6 or 7 minutes until we get to stiff white peaks.
Let me just get like 15 seconds of this.
All right, so I'm gonna count this as being pretty close to done. This is not as stiff as what I'd like for it to be, but it's certainly good enough. So what we're gonna do now is scrape off whatever's here, and we're gonna switch attachments because it's time to add the butter. So now I'm gonna use this attachment. And we're gonna turn this on again, but this time around we're gonna add in the butter. I like to add in a stick or half a stick at a time. Wait until that's fully incorporated and then I'll add in another stick. And this butter is at room temperature, fairly squishy, so it's being added in quite well. And then on top of that, the butter and the eggs are still a little warm, so it makes it even easier and faster. I'm gonna turn this on higher and I'm just gonna let it whip for about 5 or 6 minutes. Into the buttercream. We're gonna put in about 1.5 teaspoons of vanilla extract. And then just a pinch of salt. Let that incorporate. If you want to add in anything else like a nut butter or speculoos or chocolate, now would be a really great time to do it. I'm gonna keep this as is because I'm gonna use this to decorate a cake. I'm gonna use this to decorate a cake, decorate. I'm gonna use this to decorate a cake later. And so I want it to be nice and simple and just the buttercream on its own. Now I put a dollop of icing down on the cake board. This will sort of work like glue for the first cake layer. I made these cake layers about a day ago, so they have been chilling in the freezer, wrapped up with some saran wrap. They are still moist and soft. Okay. They won't dry out if you have them wrapped properly. I'm gonna go ahead and put this one down right in the center. This is going to be a naked cake. Naked cakes don't have an extra coating of icing on them outside of the crumb coat. So I'm gonna finish up the crumb coat, make it look all nice, and then move on to the rest of the decorations. I put my icing in a piping bag. When I do the crumb coat, it allows you to get an even layer of buttercream versus doing it with an offset spatula like this, because you don't always get the same amount. So if I do it with the piping bag, then chances are I'm gonna have the same amount of icing. On top of that, it's a lot faster. So I can go through, coat the cake, and then move on to the next step. The last part of the cake is going to be the fresh florals that we're gonna add. I have decided to use roses. I have the standard size roses. I got these from Trader Joe's. They're $9.99 a dozen. They are perfect. They have so many colors. So if you're just getting into using florals for cakes, then try a store like Trader Joe's or even Harris Teeter. They're fairly cheap there as well. I also got some spray roses. These are smaller. We're gonna use these to fill in some of the spaces on the cake. And I think it'll work out from here. Now, how you prep your roses or any flower that you choose to use is really important. The stems of the flowers tend to secrete some sort of juice over time. I don't know the technical term for it, but something's coming out of the stem, and you don't want that in your cake. I hear that it can be toxic, but whatever. Either way, what we want to do is trim the stems and then wrap them with this stem tape. Now, I got this particular tape from Michael's. I've had this roll for a really long time. It lasts a while. It's not really sticky like a traditional tape, but when you wrap it around the stem, it adheres to the stem. Somehow, some way it works. You wanna have stem tape like this, or you want to use like a regular Scotch tape, any sort of tape that will allow you to completely cover the piece of the stem that is now exposed from when you cut it. So this will be important, a pair of scissors, of course, and that's about it. So let's start with cutting the stems and then getting them wrapped. Starting off by cutting the stem, I know I want some longer roses and shorter roses that are gonna stick out on the cake. This is a pretty good height to work with in the beginning, and I'll kind of base the other roses off of this height. I'm just gonna remove the leaves here. Don't throw the foliage away because the greenery looks really good against the roses and on the cake. So leave some of the leaves, but maybe just set them to the side. So I'm gonna take the tape. I'm gonna start up here on this one. And what you want to do is to wrap the tape as tightly as you possibly can, because as you are wrapping, the tape is going to be sticking to the stem. It won't feel sticky. It's definitely sticking to the stem. Then I'm gonna bring this around the edge like so. Pinch. And I'm gonna cut. Now my stem is ready to be inserted into the cake, and I can insert it just like this. I'm going to place my champagne bottle. I'm gonna have to dig out part of the cake so that this will fit in, but it's totally fine for most of this to stick out because we have the roses and all the other things that are gonna be around it. So I'm gonna trace around the bottle so I know what I need to cut out. And now that I have a decent hole to work with, I'm gonna go ahead, make sure that I keep it front facing so that I know how I want to stick my bottle in. Feel free to use some force. Yeah, I think that's in there pretty good. Now, let's start adding some flowers. Now what I'm doing is with each rose, there is a particular place in the rose where there is a petal that isn't quite flexed as much as the others. So you have on this side where they're kind of all drooping to the front, but in the back there's this open space here. I'm putting this open space away from the front of the cake in order to make sure that the rest of the petals stand out. So I want to make sure that I'm decorating with this side of the rose and putting this up against the bottle so that one, the roses fit, and then two, you can see the beautiful petals. You don't want to flex all these roses and then squish them as you're putting them onto the cake. Another thing that I'm doing is adjusting the height of the roses. Some of them need to be taller or shorter. To cover up the bottle in the back, I used a shorter rose. And to kind of cover the long height of the bottle, I used one of the longer stem roses. Okay, so you want to play around with the height of the rose and the petals to give you a very full effect. Otherwise, you'll be adding flowers all day and you really don't want to do that. It's not cost effective and it'll take you a long time. Already we have a lot of our front part filled in. So I'm gonna go in with a pop of color. I'm using my fuchsia spray roses now. So let's see if we can start adding these in. I'm gonna push these all the way into the cake. And I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna fix this crack in the cake before I go any further. Actually, I kind of like the crack. There's something about the crack that's very pretty to me. You guys, let me know in the comments if you would keep the crack or not keep the crack. Because I think it's quite interesting. It's kind of like a rose grows out of concrete sort of thing. I might keep it. I think that's the beauty of decorating cakes. You're an artist and this is your canvas and you get to figure out what looks great and what doesn't look great. Now, if you're serving a client, the first thing in your mind should be what does the client actually want versus what you want to see on the cake. Feel free to merge your desires and their desires, but their desire should weigh heavier than your desire. But this cake is for me. So I'm looking at what do I like within the cake, what looks pretty to me, what is my aesthetic. And I might keep the crack, but I am mindful that that crack could cause issues later on. So I'll keep an eye on it and decorate around it. I'm gonna add some color in the back of the cake. Let's add a couple more roses because I wanna fill in a gap. This one is not gonna be stuck in the cake. It's gonna be about right here, leaning on the others. Actually, I might be able to get it into the cake. Let me see. Just to balance this out, I want to see if I can get one more here to sit on top this way. That might be a little bit more color. I'll add this towards the back. Now the back of the cake, what you want to do is try to hide as many stems as you can. And you don't have to, but you kind of want to try to, especially if this is for a client. If it's for you, go for what you know. It's not that serious. Open this one up a little bit more. We're not quite done with the cake though. We're just done with the flour portion. I'm gonna add some texture to this cake. Be super perfect anymore. And I think texture is an easy way to add. Tap, 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 tap. Now this is a champagne cake, and we gotta have some gold, some glitter in there. So I have some gold leaf, and we're gonna add this to the cake as well. Drape a little bit over the sides. Maybe see if a little, yeah. And there you have it. This is a beautiful champagne cake with fresh roses, spray roses and standard roses, as well as a few leaves and a champagne bottle that has been. If you like this kind of content, make sure that you like, subscribe, and share. I love you lots like tater tots, and I'll see you soon. Bye.